The following podcast is an RMG Media production.
Welcome to the Renaissance Podcast, a podcast for Renaissance women
and men
who want to create a modern-day Renaissance in their life and business.
We interview some of the most successful entrepreneurs and share their unique stories.
Are you ready to create your Renaissance?
I was just saying, and we're rolling now.
Rolling.
So I was just saying, Sydney, how cool it is I love like parent entrepreneurs, and it's great. And I was just saying how we end our day talking on the phone. Like while you're driving home and I'm driving home, we're usually talking. And it's funny, we'll be talking about the most stressful things. Like we just had an employee quit on the spot. And get fired is the whole thing. We could dive into that maybe or not. We're just always dealing with team stuff.
Right.
But we've been dealing with this very stressful thing, and you will be carrying this stress. And then as soon as you get home, it's automatically, hey, Bubba, what's going on? I hear you saying hey to your son, Sawyer.
You said Bubba earlier because
Yep.
I showed him a picture of Sawyer and he was like, he's a Bubba. And I was like, he is a Bubba.
He's a Bubba.
Henry's a Bubba. Through and through.
Henry's a Bubba. I know.
Yeah.
God, I never thought I would love being a boy mom so much, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah,
It's so much fun.
I'm so girly. Look at my entire office.
Right.
I'm like a pink. Everyone was like, you're so having a girl.
Yeah.
Because I'm so pink. But Sawyer is just my little chunky man and I'm just obsessed with him.
But I love
Obsessed.
how nothing matters. Like at the end of the day, it's just like none of that stress, none of that shit matters.
Yep.
It's just your kid and your family and your life. And I think people in entrepreneurship forget that, and it's always just about the grind and the hustle and the stress and the clients and whatever. And I think it's really hard for people to take a step back. But having a kid, you're able to do that. Here I am, just a dude,
Just living.
Just a dude.
no kid.
Just a
But
bro.
from the outside perspective, I can see that, and I think it's really neat. Like even y'all just talking about your kids off camera, it's like a heartwarming thing. I'm like, oh, it's so sweet.
What was life like for you pre-kids, with business and everything? And how has that changed since having kids?
Yeah, it's a great question. And interestingly enough, I feel like COVID was kind of our delineation point, as it was for a lot of people, because we were pregnant pre-COVID, and then we had a COVID baby. So Anward was already 4 or 5 months pregnant by the time COVID hit. So we had no idea what was going on. She's in women's health. She's in the clinic, seeing patients actively while pregnant. And we're like, what do we do? Should she stop working? Whatever. So obviously that was kind of a crazy time for everybody. But certainly I think my work-life balance was different. I tend to be a night owl at times. And so if I can't sleep or whatever, I'm on the laptop and I'm working on stuff. If we had a deadline that we needed to hit and certain timelines that we needed to hit, I was going to stay up and just do whatever I needed to do.
Yeah.
And to an extent, I mean, that still happens, but it's I would say it's much more rare now because we've kind of gotten our workflow down to the point that I don't have to do that. And certainly our team built out that we can delegate certain activities that I know that this guy's working on this one portion and this guy's working on another, and we're all kind of combining forces. And so it's not just me. So I think part of that's just been the growth of the business as well and building our team out to where everything isn't just on me all the time, which has been great. But I mean, certainly going back to what you were talking about originally as well, it's been very difficult for me at times to completely unplug. And I'm grateful. Thank you to Ann Ward, my wife. Love you.
Ann, love her.
She keeps me in line. And there will be times where, it's after 5 o'clock. I'm home. We're at full kiddo mode, and I've got something that I'm dealing with, and I'm in my phone and just zoned out. And it happens too often.
Right.
And so I can't say that I'm completely perfect at that.
Yeah.
I think I'm a lot better than I have been, and I think she would agree. I mean, there's times where I literally just set my phone down and I'm like, I'm not even going to look at it. There's nothing that's an emergency that can't be dealt with until tomorrow. But then there are certain times where the way my brain works, and I'm sure y'all are similar in a business ownership role, it's sometimes things just hit you out of nowhere. And I'm like, I need to send an email or I need to send something or even just put a reminder in my phone about something just so I don't forget it because I've got so many different things going on all at once.
Always.
So, those get sprinkled in at times, stream of consciousness, stuff like that. So it's a work in progress. You know, I'm not perfect at it by any means, but to your point, when you walk in the door and Henry, our almost 3-year-old, runs up to me and he's saying, Daddy, hey, let's go outside, let's play. I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And my mind completely can get out of that mode. It's a work in progress. It's hard to do at times, especially if you're dealing with stressful situations. But I feel like you really have to compartmentalize and just say, this is my home life. This is my work life. I'm going to try to leave work at home as much as possible. It's a little bit different. Ann Ward is in healthcare. She's a nurse practitioner, so she sees patients. And for the most part, she charts at work. She charts sometimes at home, like she'll bring her laptop home. But a lot of times she can kind of leave that at work. And as business owners, like, there are just times, it's tax season right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's just constantly stuff that's going on that we've got to think about.
Yeah.
And
you're in a very stressful industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew is the owner of Eshelman Construction, founded the company
2016.
2016.
Yep.
So you've been chugging along. You've built some of the most iconic places in Nashville, and you're growing like a weed. Like, you're scaling like crazy right now. You just hired Brandon, Director of Operations.
Vice President of Operations. Yep.
And that's incredible, massive step. Client of ours. Awesome social media, if I do say so myself.
I would agree.
Well,
Team
I'm
effort.
glad.
Shout
I'm
out
glad.
Ashley, Maddie, and Walker do a great
Absolutely.
job on that account.
It's a ton of fun. One of our favorites. And talk about the stress that you have to deal with. Obviously, throughout COVID, with shortages of everything, there's labor shortages, there's a whole bunch of backups going on, and you're dealing with all of it.
Yep. Supply chain was a big issue for us, and it's still working itself out. It's a lot better than it was in the past, which I'm thankful for. But certainly, because of lack of availability of certain things, prices went crazy.
Right.
And so we were in just a weird period that we had signed these contracts. And, normally, like pre-COVID and pre all the craziness, I could sign a contract 6 months or more in advance. Our sales cycle is pretty long. We might be working on a project for 6 months to a year before we ever even break ground. And then it could be another 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to finish it. So that's kind of the full life cycle of a project. So it takes a long time. And so you're in this phase, in the pre-construction phase, and you're trying to just determine high-level budgets, schedules.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what it's going to boil down to with the client. And then other details, architecture, engineering, permitting, all of those things that we're working through. And then you make certain assumptions on this end, and you get pricing feedback from our vendors and our subs and stuff like that. But then it takes 6 months to get the building permit.
Right.
And you start, and we're on site, and they say, hey, we can't honor that price anymore. This material has tripled,
gone up,
or whatever. So I think a lot of that, now in 2023, it has calmed back down.
Good. Okay.
And gotten to a little bit more sustainable level, what I would consider sustainable. We were talking to one of our lumber suppliers about a multifamily project. This would be a new construction project, and we had looked at one about a year ago, and we priced it out just for the the lumber package. And I was asking him, hey, we were at whatever per square foot before, kind of what are we looking at now? Obviously ballpark type of numbers, and it was like, it wasn't half, but it was like 25 to 30% less now than it was probably about a year ago.
Wow.
Which
Why do you
is-
think that is?
Lumber is such a commodity-driven market, and they had supply constraints during COVID, and they had a lot of production issues. A lot of it, I think, had to deal with labor. And
Always labor.
It is, yeah.
Exactly.
Always the problem.
That was such a big issue.
Huge issue. So their internal labor, for them actually like milling the lumber and taking the raw material and turning it into actual lumber that we could use on a job site. But then supply chain in terms of just trucking and getting it delivered to various places, all of that was impacted. So I think it was just a compounding issue. I do think to a certain extent, there may have been some companies that took advantage of the situation to just jack their cost
up prices.
Our suppliers, I will say here in Nashville, did as good of a job as they could have given the circumstances. But, the distributors and suppliers that we deal with, they're not setting the pricing. They have their margins, but the actual company that's producing the raw material, they're setting the prices. And so we're kind of at their mercy to a certain extent. So I think everything has just settled back down.
Yeah.
It's normalized and it's gotten back to like more of a pre-COVID, 2019 kind of world, which has been great. And certainly lead times were an issue as well. Things that, hey, normally we could order this and we'd have it in 4 to 6 weeks. Then it was 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
It was literally double. And so we had a project that was literally right smack dab in the middle of COVID. It started, I want to say like April or May of 2020. I was like, hey, are you guys still wanting to do this? And they're like, yep, absolutely. So I was thankful for that.
Yeah.
But, we ordered HVAC equipment and it should have been a maximum 8-week turnaround. It took almost 5 months to get. And it was it was supposed to be a 4-month schedule.
Yeah.
For the entire project.
Whole project.
Wow.
For the whole project. Yeah.
Just 5 months to
So
get
how do
HVAC.
you How do you
Right.
work with a client in that scenario? Like, were they pretty understanding? Obviously, like it's kind of out of your control. I mean, it is completely out of your control.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I said, look, this is a manufacturer. All the we're picking on HVAC, but it was a lot of different types of, electrical, plumbing, whatever, appliances. But I said, look, we're dealing directly with the manufacturer. We're dealing with the factory here. These aren't items that are just sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
These are custom,
They're
commercial.
made for your business.
They're made exactly for your business to the specs that your engineer spec'd.
Wow.
And so we're custom ordering it for you. I can't just go pick this up somewhere.
Yeah. Not walking into Home Depot and grabbing these items.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely been a battle, especially the last 2-3 years. And I feel like some clients are better than others.
Yeah.
And as we all know very well.
Some are more patient than others, which I feel like patience in your world is just its own planet, essentially, having that, because you and your team have to be patient, but then like the people that you're servicing. I mean,
because you're working with businesses. You're not residential, you're commercial construction.
B2B.
So you're dealing with businesses that want to get moving so they can start paying for everything.
That's right.
So that's a stressful situation in and of itself. But then you got on the other hand, where you're like, well, we've been waiting on this project for 6 months. How does that
100%.
work with like your payroll? Do you guys bill like on a monthly schedule for like the total of the project?
Yeah, so we bill monthly.
Okay.
And we bill progress payments. So essentially percentage completion. So if we built 25% of it that month, we're billing 25% of the contract.
Interesting.
There's some different structures.
I was always so curious because it seems so
are
stressful.
they just paying $10 million up for like no, it's incremental. It's like that's
it's incremental. Typically, we don't get deposits up front unless there's like a huge material order or for some reason we have to order a big package up front. Then we'll request that money so we can go ahead and order that material, equipment, whatever it may be. For a long time, it was windows. Windows were taking forever during COVID. That has kind of calmed back down. We've talked about HVAC equipment, similar things. So I've really just tried to set the expectations correctly with the client. And, you can try to vet that as much as possible on the front end. And y'all know this very well. But until you're like hand in hand working with somebody, you just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. So managing expectations is crucial. Communication, over-communicating is crucial. But I also just tell people up front, I say, look, if having a delay or having a potential budget increase due to completely unknown factors that aren't anybody's fault, if that's going to make this project, potentially not viable for you, then you don't need to be doing it.
Right.
Straight up.
Yeah.
if this is going to be too stressful for you, then you don't need to be doing it.
Yep.
I mean, this is it's a difficult business.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of work, but we're on the same team. You know, I only bill for what I actually build.
Right.
So I have every incentive to
get it done.
Get it done.
Yeah.
And get it done on budget, get it done on schedule. And sometimes that doesn't happen for whatever reason. Maybe there's a delay with the city.
Right.
Maybe there was a delay with...
You guys have experienced like crazy because Nashville's growing so much that their
Yep.
approval, what is it, approval, whatever, development department or whatever is just not approving projects.
Yeah, the codes department.
Codes is just backed up. Everything is.
Yeah, they're super backed up.
Yeah.
And they're not staffed really appropriately. And I could get into that. That's a long, it's a whole other podcast we could do on that. Let's just say, to summarize quickly, that there's some great people down there that work at the city that really care and they really want to move stuff along, but they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I think there is some of it of like a government inefficiency that as well, that certain departments don't talk to each other. Because we deal with the codes department, but we're also dealing with Metro Water for utilities.
Yeah.
We're dealing with NES for electric. We're dealing with Piedmont for gas. Those are all different entities, but they all need to coordinate. We deal with Public Works, which is now NDOT, and they control sidewalks and utilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The fire marshal, they're all different departments. And what we've learned is that a lot of them don't talk to each other
at all.
And they don't coordinate. So it's kind of our job to quarterback that and say, well, Public Works said this and the fire marshal is saying this, and that doesn't match. So like we need to get on the same page.
Well, sorry, I want you to finish that.
No, you're good.
I was going to say, it's so fascinating talking to someone who's in what the hell is going on down there.
Right.
Because we were just downtown on Saturday for the Luke Combs concert, and I don't do
It's
that.
tough.
Yeah.
Because it just gives me such a headache.
Right.
And we went down there, and I was like, that hotel, that's new. I've never seen, we have an Apple store on Broadway now. Didn't know that. I sort of just, I don't really leave my little Nippers Corner area. Walker makes fun of me all the time because I'm just in my spot. But like for you to be in that, like I really want to know, what are your thoughts on the current state of Nashville construction? Like, is this normal for a city to just be like a million cranes? I mean, so much traffic. Everyone's bitching about the infrastructure. And like, is that... What are your thoughts on that? Is this happened in cities around us, or like what is the deal?
That's a great question and something that I love talking about. Obviously, growing up here in Nashville, I've seen the change, and it was kind of this sleepy city. But we had the music industry. You know, you had some other industries. Automotive was here, HCA, a lot of healthcare. So like it was a great city, but it wasn't like this huge booming southern town that it is now. And so, you know, I really think that the construction market is not slowing down at all. I mean, anecdotally, with our business, our pipeline is bigger than it's ever been. We have more projects, we have more work than we've ever had. And, you know, I'm super thankful for that. It was certainly an element of right place, right time for us. But, you know, that's entrepreneurship. You see an opportunity and you just go for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do feel like Nashville is pretty unique on at least on a national scale. And I don't think anybody in the city, if you look back, you know, 10 years ago, it was 2013, things were like really starting to heat up. I think that was around the time that we had the New York Times article that said Nashville is like the it city, and it was this next, you know, the next big up and coming city, and it just like went insane. You know, I grew up in Williamson County. Williamson County has always been a strong market. Brentwood and Franklin, especially, everybody kind of knows about, you know, what's gone on down there.
Yeah,
but a lot of that necessarily wasn't equating to the actual downtown core and metro, but it always seemed like to me that a lot of it was underutilized. And even when I moved back, which was the end of 2014, like a lot of downtown was just parking lots or just like run down warehouses, just like underutilized types of buildings.
Yeah.
So, you know, we hear a lot about the growth and everything that's happening, and certainly gentrification and stuff like that. And I do think those are all legitimate topics. But I do think that Nashville is a unique city right now. I think you can maybe lump in like Austin, Denver, maybe Charlotte, that are kind of peer cities with Nashville right now that are having, similar things that are going on.
Booming, yeah.
But that's really about it. And I feel like those cities are great. I think they all have their kind of own character.
Right.
But people are still coming here. Businesses are still coming here because of the culture here.
Yeah.
Because of the music industry and all of that's gone on. No state income tax certainly helps. It's a very business-friendly city.
It is, yeah.
Similar to Texas. Texas is very business-friendly as well. So, that migration of not only people but businesses it's still happening.
Yeah.
And it hasn't slowed down. So you see all of this development that's been going on. And historically, the development that was going on, mainly in like the downtown core, was mostly local developers that are local to Nashville, like back when I was growing up. And now what you see is just unbelievable because it's massive, massive companies that are coming out of New York and Chicago and California that are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into Nashville. And that was just like, even 10 years ago was pretty unheard of.
Right. I feel like even like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, I guess we're coming up on like a pretty significant anniversary of the pandemic. I mean, I guess we are 3 years. And that's insane to me. But I feel like pandemic is when it just blew up, when everyone was like, we're getting out of LA and New York and these insane cities where it's just crazy and we're going to move anywhere else. And that's when I feel like Austin really, really blew up. And same thing with Nashville.
Yep.
But yeah, I moved here like 5 years ago and it was different then.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with it then because I found out it's not just Broadway, obviously. Like I make fun of Sydney for not leaving Nippers Corner, but she does. But like it's not just Broadway. Like that's not the culture.
Right.
No, it's everywhere else. It's Germantown. It's like these, Wedgwood, Houston, like these cool little pockets where it's just like awesome businesses, awesome restaurants, a lot of really, really great chef-driven, cool restaurants in Nashville that are just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. Local music, it's great. Everything about this city is fantastic.
I'm curious because you started the business in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been in this game for like 7 years, going on 7. Congratulations.
7 years. Thank you.
You've built a multi-million-dollar business in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
That's like, and you're 32?
33.
33.
Just turned 33.
We're like neck and neck. I mean, it's incredible. And it's so, and I know that you did that with blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
I know that you have. But how have you navigated just this world when it feels like, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, there's so much competition because of how the construction industry here, like, is the industry here.
Yeah,
right.
It feels like it's like
it's taken
music
over
industry. It's like healthcare, music, construction.
Yeah.
Like it feels like that is what it is. And like, how have you navigated that? Because it's, I just feel like that could be so overwhelming. And I'm sure you've had those moments. And it's like, but you're doing incredible things and you really made such a name for yourself here. But like, what has that been like?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It has been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as y'all know. That's a great question. I feel like part of it, again, was right place, right time. And just being in a city like Nashville that is booming as opposed to being, I don't know, somewhere else that's not. So there's an element of that. Like I'm not Warren Buffett, but I saw an opportunity and just went for it. And I think that back then, I was 26. I was a little naive. I was probably overconfident. But, my fallback then was, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I was like, what is the worst that it's going to happen? Right.
Yeah.
Now I think that value proposition is completely different for me. But, it was a situation where I was like, I know a lot of people in the industry. If this doesn't work out for some reason, I always can fall back and get a job in construction, real estate development, whatever it may be. But, I think one of the things that we saw was that some of the larger, more established commercial contractors in Nashville, because of the growth, they were scaling a lot too. And, maybe they were a $20, $30 million business, and now they're a 60, 70, $100 million business. And so they're chasing larger scale contracts. They want a $10 million project, $15 million project, $20 million project. And yes, there's plenty of those, but there's a lot of competition for those as well. So there's kind of this vacuum of smaller projects that I felt like we could kind of, just go all in and see what could happen. So we started out with a lot of smaller scale commercial projects. Tenant build-outs that's a big segment. And it's essentially where, especially with all the new construction that you have now, let's say it's a mixed-use building where it's apartments up above, and then on the bottom floor, it's all commercial space.
Right.
So the developer will essentially what they call white box the space. So like the utilities are there, usually walls are up. It's like a concrete floor, and it's kind of bare bones, but it's pretty much white box. Like, you don't have to do utility work. You can just come in and build out whatever you want.
Yeah.
So if you see like spin studios or coffee shops, those types of things, smaller bars and restaurants as well, they can come in, and typically, in 3 or 4 months, they can build out a spot and open up. So that was kind of the low-hanging fruit for us. Now, all that being said, there's still a lot of competition that's in that world too. And so I really had this mentality of like, I'm just going to go out and shake the bushes and see what I can find. And I feel like I still have that mentality now. I feel like business development is one of my strengths. And as I continue to grow, it was like I was wearing all the different hats.
Every hat.
And doing all the things. And I realized like either I'm not good at this, or I don't enjoy it, or it's not the best use of my time, or all of the above. And so what can I focus on that is actually going to move the needle for the business? And so it's something that takes a lot of time, and it's relationships. It doesn't happen overnight. So I was very thankful to have a few people that took a chance on me early.
Yeah.
Because they said, "Hey, what have you done?" And I'm like, "Well, I did XYZ with my old company." And they said, No, like, what have you done on your own? Well, I'm just starting. So I kind of need you to give me a shot.
Yeah, just say yes.
And so certain vendors that I'd network with, stuff like that, were like, "Hey, we've got this project. It's small, but the big guys can't get to it because they're too busy. So you can come in and do a good job and just kind of keep building that snowball, keep building that resume."
Yeah.
So it took a lot of time.
What was your process like starting? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you,
No.
but I was curious because you worked for a very big company out of Atlanta after college. What was it like? Because obviously, you're 26, single, whatever. It's really easy to just be like, yeah, what the heck? But what was that process like? You moved back to Nashville. Did you work at all, or you were kind of just like all in? How did you start, and what was that like?
Yeah, so I worked while I was here.
Okay.
I had a job with a different company doing project management.
Okay.
And I kind of knew that eventually I wanted to do my own thing, but I wasn't sure how that would materialize. So when I did fully go out on my own, I did have a company that I helped do a little bit of consulting work with. They were doing, they're not an architecture or an engineer, but they did like 3D renderings and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Because that's a very intensive activity.
Yeah.
So the architects will build the models, but to actually do like high quality renderings, you need a ton of computing power.
Yeah.
And so it like basically takes over your computer. It's like you can't work. It literally would do that for however big the model was.
Yeah.
So they might outsource it to a company so that they can keep working on what they need to work on.
Right.
And then they would spit out the high quality renderings, and they would do like videos and fly-throughs. So I was helping them do a few things. So that had a little bit of income, but I mean, not much coming in the door. And then I essentially just had my savings that I had saved up. And I was living off of that and being as lean as I possibly could.
Yeah.
But I had a buddy of mine, Tyler Thomason, shout out Tyler. We go way back to middle school. And he and his dad have a residential home building company. And they have a commercial license, but they do pretty much all residential.
Nice.
And so we were able to collaborate on a couple projects that I was able to help them out with, which helped, again, have some income come in the door for me, because it took a long time to actually get my license and then go out on my own.
Oh, wow.
So I knew of some projects that were coming kind of in the pipeline, but it was not like, oh, I've got 3 contracts already signed and lined up. It was just a complete leap of faith. And so you just have to make that leap.
I love it.
And, for other entrepreneurs or people that are thinking about starting a company, to your point, there's tons of competition. There's tons of construction companies in Nashville. And from the outside looking in, you could look at that and be like, maybe this isn't a good idea, because there's just too much competition. These people are very entrenched. It's very relationship based. And, some of the developers that we worked with whatever company for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
But then they got too big and they decided to just flush that relationship down the toilet for whatever reason. So there's always opportunity.
Right.
And you just have to find it.
Yeah.
And you have to go in and you just have to jump.
I love that way of thinking. That's the way to do it. Well, I'm curious now, because the value proposition is a lot different. You have 2 kids, you got a wife, you have your business is very successful. But let's say restart button, you're working that job in Atlanta, you have your kids and your wife, you're living your life, you're unhappy. What are you doing?
That's a great question. Yeah. I feel like I've always been entrepreneurial. I had like a landscaping business growing up just in my neighborhood, and always was doing things to try to make some extra money. My parents were basically said, hey, you either need to have a job, go be a cashier at a grocery store or whatever, or you have to do something to make money. And doing the landscaping turned into, hey, there's an elderly couple and they can't pick up their leaves in the fall, or it would snow on the 2 times a year that it snows here. And hey, they need somebody to help shovel their driveway. Yeah. And hey, they're going out of town. Can you take care of their dog while they're gone? So it was like these odds and ends that added up that, I made a decent amount of money being 13, 14, 15 years old, which was cool. So it they instilled that spirit in me. Right. It was like, hey, we totally support you as long as you're doing something productive.
Well, and you're such a relationship person too, which I feel like with really successful people, like that's usually a part of the narrative. Like and that's, when we look at your brand and what we do from a strategy standpoint, we create these events, we work together to create these quarterly events with you, because we know Andrew's doing this and he's becoming so successful because he builds relationships with people. You cultivate relationships, you nurture them. So many people know you and love you, and you're just very you're just great at that piece to business, which I think is so important to entrepreneurship. When you look at people like you who were like, I had people take chances on me, but I know that it's because you had that relationship there and they had that trust in you, because you're just a good person. People want to be around you. And I think that that's totally like a part to business. Like take those risks, but also build and nurture those relationships. And that's like truly one of the big keys to success. So it sounds like that's just been part of your trajectory.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, relationships are key in any business, like you said, but specifically in construction, because we have so many vendors, subcontractors that we work with, architects, engineers, talking about the city, all of the waters that we have to navigate there. And, I've heard of instances where some contractors that are from out of state have tried to open offices here because of everything that's going on. Right. And straight up, like the vendors and the subs are just like, we don't know you.
We don't know you.
Like we're not going to work with you.
Why are you here?
Yeah. Right. Well, they're here because, they
want the money.
Get in. They think they can get in. Yeah. And they're like, no, we're not even going to bid to you.
Wow.
I mean, quite
That's
literally.
Interesting.
So again, it's something that it's a snowball effect. It's a cumulative effect. It takes time to really grow that. Again, it's been 7 years for me, and I still feel like, the snowball is rolling. But, probably like year 3, maybe around there, like about halfway through, I started getting a lot of phone calls. Hey, we've got this project. Will you come take a look at it? And that's obviously a great feeling, but they're like, hey, I talked to so-and-so, you built out their space. They had really good things to say about you. So, it's very referral driven. It's very relationship driven, even with specific clients or specific developers that we're actually targeting because we know they've got XYZ project coming up and it's kind of within our scope and wheelhouse. But then having those just unsolicited phone calls and inquiries, I mean, that's obviously a great feeling to have, but you don't get that unless you do good work and unless you have clients that are willing to go to bat for you. So, yes, we have a physical product and that's what we build, but it's also, we're a service business.
Yeah.
Just like y'all. And so client relationships are so important. So I always tell our guys, it's like at the end of the day, this is our customer. And even if we don't do another project with them ever again, you never know what that might lead to.
Right.
And so we need to make sure that they're happy. And it doesn't always happen. I mean, I'm just going to be real. We always like to talk about our wins, and that's great. But, we've had some...
There's loses.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. We've had some bad experiences.
Yeah.
We've had some projects that have gone south. Thankfully, not into a terrible degree. But, at the end of the day, even if we're on schedule, we're on budget, those things that we've talked about that are so critical, but the client's not happy, it's like, you walk away from the project and you feel like there's just something a little bit left to be desired,
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't happen all the time, but if we can consistently deliver, if we can provide good value, good communication to the clients, and, if at the end of the project we're not best friends, fine. I'm not trying to be best friends, but sometimes you do become friends, and it can turn into a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. And reputation is definitely a big thing in Nashville, as it is everywhere. I know everyone says, well, this is big city, small town feel though. Like everyone knows everyone. You need to be careful. But when people tell me though in business, never burn a bridge, I'm always kind of like, I know that that's important not to, but sometimes, and we're all nodding because we all have those people where you just are like, I don't really care. It's actually more hurting for me to be tied to you in any capacity, like for my team and my business. So like,
I lose
there are those situations.
Yeah, I lose the customer's always right philosophy every now and then. I believe that sometimes, but then we'll deal with someone and I'm like, oh, there's no way this shit's justifiable. Like, you're just a terrible person and I don't give a shit. Whatever, because I know 100%. That if I feel that way, then I guarantee there are 10 other people that feel that way too that you've worked with. So
yeah, and I totally agree. It can't be the customer is always right.
They're
and
not always
whatever they say goes. And with us, these contracts and these negotiations, like I said, they take so long that sometimes people don't remember what they said 6 months ago.
Yeah.
In fact, that happens all the time. Yep. And so it's up to us to document
records.
that.
Yeah.
And
receipts.
Keep that.
That's the key.
Keep the receipts. Keep it in writing.
That's the key.
And actually, John, on May 13th, 2014.
Yeah. And it's not meant to be contentious, but it's like when the schedule's impacted, when the budget is impacted, if they think that it's our fault, they're going to say, well, you need to eat that.
Yeah. I didn't tell you to put the bar there.
Right.
Yeah, you did. It's right here. You signed off on this.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's numerous examples of times that has happened.
Yeah.
And we approach it as, hey, we're on the same team here. Like, this is friendly fire. We're not trying to get into a contentious pissing match of like, this person did this, or the architect screwed up the drawings, or the engineer screwed up. It's like, mistakes are just going to happen. There's no such thing as a perfect set of plans. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Never has existed. There's no such thing as a perfect contractor. That doesn't exist. But we're going to be the best we can be.
Right.
And let's work together there's going to be a few hurdles here and there, and let's just figure the shit out and just keep moving.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you get into the squabbling, you get into the bitching and the moaning, and it takes more time and energy to do that than to just figure it out and move on.
Get through the hurdle.
You know, again, you can vet some of that out on the front end with certain clients, and sometimes you can't, and that's just kind of part of the ball game. You know, when you're playing in the big leagues. But yeah, we've had a few certain situations. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here for obvious reasons, but either we had to just cut ties before we even started the project because we just saw that the direction that it was going to go in and the red flags were waving and stuff like that. Or it's been you're halfway through and I got to just have a group huddle with the team and be like, guys, swallow the ego, swallow the pride. We're going to finish. We're never going to work with these guys again.
Yeah.
But we're just going to get it done
and
move
sucks,
on.
But let's move on.
And, you know, I feel like being able to do that and try to be humble, swallow the pride.
Yeah.
You know, just put your ego aside and just moving on is very valuable. But there's been certain situations that we've run into where somebody made a mistake and it wasn't us. But sometimes it's hard to pinpoint exactly what happened.
Right.
And so there was some kind of change that was necessary and it's going to cost X amount of money. And the client says, I'm not paying for that. And, you know, there's been times where, again, we talk to the guys and to just say, just do it and we're going to move on. And if we've got to eat it, we're just going to eat it. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that for everybody and we're not going to do it for something potentially really big.
Yeah.
But if you're literally arguing with me about $1,000 and you have a $3 million contract, like,
yeah,
it's not worth it.
Right.
It's not worth it.
You're in the wrong.
Right. 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 Exactly.
You know, like you're in the business of spending a lot of cash.
Right.
So let's maybe not cry over a couple $1,000s or whatever it is.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And I think there's, for whatever reason, not with everybody, but there's a certain stigma around construction and around contractors that, like, you know, there's some that are unethical and it's totally true. And it happens all the time. And they're not straightforward about accounting and budgeting and the numbers. And we try to be as transparent as possible through the whole process of, like, here's how we arrived to that budget. Sometimes there's certain assumptions that we had to make because we didn't know. And now those assumptions have changed based on certain factors with the project. And here's how we quantified that.
Right.
And here's the difference, you know, and it's not us going back at you trying to get more money, you know. In a lot of cases, when stuff like that happens, we've gone to the client, especially if we had a good relationship. You know, normally if there's a change order on the project, we get to put our markup on top of that. And I just said, look, you just pay for what it costs. I'm not going to put my markup on it because it's already costing you extra where you didn't think that, you know, you were going to have to spend this money. We're just trying to be a good partner and we're going to take care of it and we're going to move on. Yeah. But I can't just eat that. Like, there's just no room.
They at least have to pay for that. But that's what I love so much about you as a business owner and as a person. And that's why I think we all kind of work really well together because we're very similar, but you're also very real. You don't bullshit people. You just give it to them straight. And I love that's kind of one of your core values is the transparency. And we've done videos on that and talked a lot about it. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think when you're working with a lot of these companies, they can be shady with the pricing. They're like, maybe might cost.
Mark that up
just
there.
Add it to them. Yeah. That's just what it costs. And I just think that's such a bullshit way to do business. It's like, just be real with them. Focus on the relationship. Focus on the project, the end result, or even like the, you know, what it could be, quote unquote, you know, because you never know, especially in Nashville. Like, that person could know that person that's building, you know, a stadium. And like, you never know. And that I've just always admired that about you. So I think you should always do that. Always be real.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a core value of ours for sure. And it's important. And going back to what I said earlier, I try to set those expectations with the clients on the front end. And it's like, if you're going to freak out over $1,000 that pops up because XYZ happened, then, like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, you get ready.
You know, like, but ultimately what I've found is that even in the shitty situations where it can get a little contentious, is that they're just stressed.
Yeah.
All of that pre-construction stuff that we talked about that happens upstream from us that we don't have control over took longer than they thought. It cost more money than they thought. And so now we had a 6-month schedule and they want us to get done in 4 months. And it's like, it just doesn't work like that. So you get to 4 months and they, in their mind, think that, well, this should be done already.
Yeah.
Even though that had nothing to do with us. And it's like, go talk to the mayor, go talk to your city council person about why the permit took so long.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you've been paying rent, but like, there's nothing that I can do about that. I can't condense my schedule any further.
Right.
I mean, there's no physical way that that's even possible.
Yeah.
So, you're just going to have to gut it out and we're going to get this done and it's going to be good.
Yeah.
But usually what happens, regardless of the client type, whether it's a restaurant, office, retail, whatever it may be, is that they're so focused on they just need to get open.
Right.
Because they need to make money or they need to open their office so they can have their staff in there, that as soon as we're done, we get out of the way, they're just like,
bye.
Yeah. It's just out of sight, out of mind. Hey, they'll call us like, hey, there's an electrical outlet. It isn't working. Okay, not a big deal. Like we come and we're going to fix it. Everything's under warranty for a year.
Interesting.
But then we had one project in particular during COVID that was very challenging. It was a challenging client. And, there was a lot of unnecessary BS. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of energy sapping to just defend ourselves from just ridiculous claims that they were making of like, oh, this got screwed up and that got screwed up. And it's like, no, this is right. This is what you told us to do. And that's what we did. And ultimately, we finished the project. It was pretty much on time. It was very close to being on budget. And the change orders that they had were stuff that they changed. So that added to their contract, but it's not anything that we did.
Right.
And then they opened and it was like, never heard from them again.
It was fine.
So funny.
It was totally fine. They just needed to get open.
Yeah.
They needed to get off of our ass and just focus on running their business.
Yeah.
And that was totally fine. They called us like once maybe.
Wow.
About maybe one thing.
Yeah.
And that was it.
It is so funny because, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like you're a pretty insignificant, obviously you're building their business. So like that's not insignificant, but they've got so much more to focus on, like being profitable, marketing their business, learning how to deal with staff, like all of those things, especially like some of these like first-time restaurants and things like that. Not that everyone's difficult, but like, it's just, you're the professional. Like we know, like you guys are going to handle it.
Yep.
Let them handle it. Y'all, let's just get your pants ready because the world's about to kick your feet out from under you once you open your doors. Yep. And it is funny how that happens. They're all complaining, and then all of a sudden they actually get going with their journey.
And I've had that exact conversation, especially on projects that have a longer schedule. It's maybe a year-long project, and we're like halfway through, and they're just getting antsy, and it's like, hey, why isn't this done? And I just have to have a reset. And again, it's keeping it real. Yeah. It's just like, look, if you don't trust us, then we need to like hit the pause button.
Right.
And completely like rethink what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because all of this is based on you're trusting us to be the professional. So let us do our job.
Yep.
And we'll let you do yours. And if we need you, we'll give you a shout.
Right.
But we've got this.
You got it. Yeah.
We've got it.
There's going to be those things that are going to pop up. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know shit about construction. Why would I ever question what y'all are doing? I have no reason to. I trust you. I know what you're doing. And at the end of the day, I just need this business to open, but I got to go focus on those things. It's funny. We get that. The similarities between our businesses are very funny because you're like on a much bigger scale with like bigger stakes, I feel like. But we still deal with the same stuff. Like we get people all the time that are backseat driving and we're like, pause. We got this.
Yeah.
Great idea. Love it. We're good. Thank you. And it's just very funny to me.
I've found that talking to a lot of different business owners. I'm working with EO right now and doing the Catalyst program. I think we've talked about that. Y'all definitely need to.
Yeah.
We've heard, you've told us. I feel like it would be great.
Great folks over there.
They are. And it just seems like it doesn't matter even size necessarily of the business or what market or industry they're in. It's like we all pretty much deal with the same problems, the same bullshit, and you can narrow it down to a couple of different things that it's like even if you're, you know, a bakery.
Right.
Or whatever. You're like, what would the parallel be with a bakery and a construction company? But there are people. Exactly.
Like people. Period.
There are some. And it's amazing to me how it always boils down to that's like, no, we're dealing with pretty much the same problems. Right. It may be on a little bit different scale or a little bit different type of issue, but it's ultimately the same.
The same thing.
The same thing.
It is very comforting as well. If there are entrepreneurs listening that haven't or that don't have other business owner friends, find them. Because we were saying this earlier. We were at lunch with another agency owner, and I was like, this is like group therapy because we're all dealing with the same thing. Yep. And this is like the only place that I actually feel seen and heard. Sydney and I just constantly back and forth are saying the same shit to each other about our frustrations. And then having just always,
in a circle, just circling around. So
for us very productive. To talk to someone else and then be like, oh, I just dealt with it. And I was like, oh, thank you. Yep. We're not the only ones. It's so great.
No, I think you're hitting on a very important point. Yeah. And it's that as entrepreneurs and business owners, we feel like at times that you're on an island.
Yeah.
And you're not.
You're not.
I'm very guilty of this all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, talked about my wife earlier and about work-life balance. And, you know, we've kind of gotten in a good groove of like, she wants to know high level kind of what's going on and what we're working on. But
she's like, give me the cliff notes, Andrew.
Right. She doesn't need to know the details. And she's like, well, that's really stressful. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like, it is.
Just hearing the high-level bullet points, that's really stressful.
Right,
I love that. Yeah.
And especially if I get in the weeds on something, and I'll tell her, like, I just need to vent for a second. I don't need any advice or whatever. I'm just going to vent. Or I do need your advice on this situation. So we have a good, relationship and communication there. But above and beyond your spouse, you've got to have other people that you can talk to.
Right.
I have people that are industry specific in the construction industry that I can talk to, and it's so invaluable. But then also just other business owners in general. I feel like don't pigeonhole yourself into one or the other.
Yeah.
Because you can get too into the industry stuff, and you can't see the forest for the trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
But talking to a lot of other business owners, again, like I said, you realize that all of our problems are very similar.
Yeah.
And so one thing that the Nashville Entrepreneur Center is doing and EO is doing is just getting people placed together to have those forums, to have those conversations. And it's just so valuable. So
love that.
Yeah, any entrepreneurs out there, any small business owners that are listening, definitely invest in that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth it.
It is. I mean, any type of just communication. I want to check out the NEC for sure because I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, just communicate. Go out there and meet friends in this world because that's helped our business so much over the last year even. It's just like talking to other people. Mm-hmm. So
and mentors and business coaches too. We recently hired a business coach. She owns an agency, and it's just been
awesome.
It's been a game changer just because you're able to just have that perspective and talk to people that have done it and who have understand how to form the team and how to structure the team and how to do the org chart and like
everything.
How to give people trajectory and all these things. And we're like,
and the comfort, like that's the biggest thing.
It's a lot.
It's so much, and it's so overwhelming to feel like just one of us has to deal with all of the issues or carry that whole weight. Is an insane way of thinking. But then having like a business coach that's like Tiffany Napper, so great. Love her to death. She's really helped us. And it's awesome. We're going to have her back on the podcast to talk about our growth. But anyway.
Sidetrack.
But yeah, just to have the comfort of being like, hey, I know X, Y, and Z. They've gone through the same problem. Everyone goes through it all. Just that comfort is so reassuring. And it's almost like a renaissance in itself. Just to tag our name.
There you go.
But we're experiencing our own renaissance. Myself, like in my own life, I'm just viewing things in such a different light now than I was even 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's great. I definitely am all on talking to people.
And the problems, what I've noticed too, is the problems that I dealt with as more of a startup, as a smaller company, those first couple of years, it was more survival mode. It was its own set of issues. And then you start getting into scale and growth mode, it's a whole different set of problems. And again, you feel like you're on an island, like, oh my God, like nobody else is dealing with this. And it's just not true.
Yeah, it's not true.
And there's so many people that can help you be like, oh yeah, and I don't even necessarily need advice of like, you need to do this, 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 and this, but it's just like, here's my experience and here's what we did. And there's never, I feel like, a perfect answer. There's never always the right answer, but you can learn from what other people have done and try to integrate, things like, hey, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a good idea. Can we pull that in? And for us, it's like the scale that we were at and the scale that we're heading towards right now, like our processes and our procedures and the way that we were doing things just does not.
It's not sustainable.
Some things don't carry over.
Yeah.
And so we're in that weird period of flux because we know where we need to be and we know where we want to be, but we're in that period of figuring out like, oh, this process isn't working. This software or whatever we're using is just not working.
Yeah.
And we've got to implement new things, and it's growing pains, all good things. But that's where it's so important to have the team to buy in and have everybody on the same page. And it's like, look, I know that this is frustrating right now. We're just going to have to power through it. But no, big picture, this is why we're doing it. And in the long run, we're getting to where we need to be. It's just incremental. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
Implementing a new software for us, which we did last year, is difficult. And it's been pretty much a year, and we're still having trouble with it in certain regards. I mean, we've gotten it down a lot better, but again, like the old software that we used for project management was not going to scale with us.
Right. Yeah.
And we came to that realization, like, this isn't going to work. Like, we've got to make a change.
So interesting.
What is your best piece of advice as we're kind of wrapping? Because I'd want to be aware of your time. I feel like the three of us could talk forever,
Absolutely.
Which we do. But I want to talk about leadership real quick because I just feel like you are such a natural leader. And I also think that's interesting looking at your birth order since you're the last. You're like the baby and Walker is too. And I always think that that's interesting because you look at like firstborns and you're like, natural born leaders, like they have to be, like they're the leaders of the households, whatever. And you were the baby, but you have such natural leadership skills. And I feel like you are such a great leader. So what is your best piece of leadership advice?
That's a great question. I would say for entrepreneurs, it's persistence. There's been so many times, especially early on, and even recently, where I'm like, what in the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing this? And life kicks us in the rear all the time. And I know you all have had the same internal conversations, and you're just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Would it be better just to go work a 9 to 5 and just go home every night and being able to leave it at work and not think about it? But it's just not the way that I'm wired.
Right.
And, when I first started, I got very deep in the interview process with Google because they were rolling out Google Fiber. And they needed construction project managers to manage the rollout of Google Fiber. It was going to be a very well-paying job. It, had all the benefits that you have at a place like Google.
Yeah.
Very flexible working environment, remote work. That was before remote work was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I declined it and decided to go out on my own. And that first year, I was like, what did I do? Like, why did I do that? I could be making X right now and working for a really great company. But you just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
You can't give up. I think, at least historically in the past for me, if something got hard, my instinct was just to throw my hands up and just be like, screw it. I'm just not dealing with this and just move on to something else. And I think that almost all problems that we face as entrepreneurs, you can solve with just persistence.
Yeah. Just got to keep going.
Just keep going. You just got to keep powering through. And it's a grind sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%. It really is. It's difficult and you feel like you're on an island, but you can't give up. And that's where a lot of people fail, They give up and they give in. And certainly there's times where it might be appropriate to pivot and do other things. I'm not saying that, but you got to have that mentality of you waking up every single morning and you're like, what am I going to do? Even if it's something very small, but to keep that ball rolling, to keep that snowball getting bigger and a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's difficult to do. But if you're not persistent, if you're just going to give up, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Love that.
That was great. Yeah.
That's so good.
That's the truth, though. I mean, even if it's like just dealing with a simple task for the day, if you don't do it, you're not, you got to just keep going. That's it.
Yeah. And that's, for me, that's prioritizing what I'm working on and realizing that there may be 2 or 3 things that day that I really, really, really need to get done.
Yeah.
And let me just focus on that. And I know that I've got 15 other things that I need to be doing too. But if that waits till tomorrow, it's just going to wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fine. But prioritizing and focusing on those things, that moves the needle. That keeps the ball rolling.
Right. It's great.
You're such a hard worker. It's so inspiring.
Yeah,
it's
is.
like awesome. I don't know. It's like, that's why we love having people like you on the show, because it just like makes us be like, okay, all right, it's hard, but that persistence and just like that, I'm going to keep going, keep grinding, even if it's just a little bit, because we can't always give 100% every single day. Sometimes it's for me, sometimes it's like, y'all, it's just a 15% day. Like I just went really hard yesterday.
And that's going to happen.
Tank is a little empty. Like,
But that's
I don't know.
the beauty of actually being an entrepreneur, because you can say, I need to be 15% today.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. You earned it.
You cannot be in that. You do not get those.
Walker,
Yeah.
you don't get
I don't
You
get
can
it.
never say that to me.
I like to dream.
I need 100% all the time from
I
you.
like to be a dreamer, I guess. That's it. It'd be nice to just say it, but
Can I ask you guys a quick question? I know we're trying to wrap up, but
Sure.
sell me the vision. You're working with the coach now. You're building out the team. You guys are growing as well, which has been really cool for me to see and be part of. What's the next 3 years, 5 years look like for Renaissance, or even a year?
Big question.
You can give me the 1 year.
yeah. Well, so I mean, there's like certain milestones. So definitely, like big financial milestone is hitting 7 figures. I haven't done that yet. It's just it's like an ego thing to say because it hurts us.
No, it's an ego thing.
It's a big thing, but we want to hit it so badly. So definitely 7 figures. Short term, fucking dial in our org chart and like actually, because we restructured when you started. I don't know.
Last fall.
So you were already a client, but we basically changed out how our team operated in terms of like how it's. So right now you work with Ashley as your main account manager, main point of contact. Under her is Maddie, and Maddie's pretty much creating all of your content under Ashley's guidance directly from meetings, conversations, everything, just basically strategy, all that. So that was the biggest thing because originally it was just one person. So we want to continue to dial that in and basically make it flow so Sydney can get out of the weeds because right now she's dealing with a lot of the client issues and it just doesn't make sense. Like she needs to be focusing on big picture things like the summit, focusing more on the podcast and just a lot of business development things because she's really our leading arm in that. I really want to focus on growing the video side of the company and the creative side of the company because there's a big opportunity there. So I need to be out of the weeds of dealing with like employee bullshit. Love the team, but like I don't want to have to worry about that.
Right.
So we need to have some form of like additional management. So that's kind of like
Management, I think, is our big goal.
So we can
like
just
a
focus on
management
scaling.
system.
Yeah.
So we can focus on scaling and doing like the big visionary stuff. Because next year we'll hit 10 years of this thing. And I'm like,
That is wild.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I'm like,
good for y'all.
I'm like, all right, year 10.
Yeah.
I gotta stop worrying about a little hashtag here.
Right.
Right.
We can't.
Not that that's not important. It's so important.
It is.
But I would rather not like have to be in that nitty gritty because, I did that for years. It was just me, myself, and I for a long time at Renaissance, which I think is why our growth was a little bit slower because I undercharged significantly for
And
half
I came
a decade.
around and
then Walker came in and was like,
forced us to
oh
scale.
my God, like you're so undervaluing what we do. And it's,
Yep.
a huge value add to have really
Just
great
mainly
social.
because I just didn't get paid. So I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to make more money. I'm going to make any
You
money.
have to reassess this whole financial model you have going on, Sydney. It's really cute, but it's not moving the needle. So I just think for us, it's we feel like Renaissance is a brand. It is a lifestyle. It is so much more than just a social media agency. And we're taking our summit to Charleston in December.
Ooh,
and
okay.
we're looking to expand it to mostly the Southeast because I don't like any other part of the country.
Right.
Just kidding. I love the South,
Same.
and I have big dreams to just impact entrepreneurial women across the South with the Renaissance Women's Summit. And so for me, that's like my heart. But Renaissance Marketing Group is our bread and our butter, and it is foundation, and it is truly a passion. Walker and I wake up every day. We're stoked. I truly am stoked to come to work every single day. Love it so much. Was worried with motherhood that I maybe was going to not, I'm just such a natural born entrepreneur like you. And I just love creating and I love working and I love pouring into my team and pouring into my clients. And so I think just keep going. We've talked about, there's a lot of agency talk of acquisition. We've been approached, and of course we're not going that route because we're too in love with what we're doing.
We've just gotten started. I feel like
we're just getting started, but
we just each year I swear we're always like, we're just getting going. Because it's like we constantly are changing and growing so much that it's so much fun. And we're just like making such a real impact, So like we're working with great businesses like yourself.
Yeah.
It's so much fun that like we're able to, and that was my biggest thing with joining Renaissance. It's like what I'm doing, it's not only helping this company grow, but it's going to help you as well. And that to me is kind of insane because I never thought of myself in that way. I never thought that anything that I was going to do was make an impact. So it's cool now that I wake up and that's just what I'm doing.
And y'all do make an impact.
It's cool.
Don't shortchange yourself. The work that you guys are doing is awesome. It's amazing. We can close with this. So somebody approached me recently, and obviously I'm not going to name names, but he owns a video marketing business.
Wow.
And digital marketing. And did Ashley tell you this already?
I don't think so.
I told her. So unsolicited, unprompted, we were just talking, and he was like, "Hey man, by the way, I really wanted to say that your marketing has just been really on point recently."
Wow.
He was like, "Most of the construction industry doesn't do a good job of that," which is something that the three of us have talked about a lot. And he was like, y'all are knocking out of the park. And he was like, "Who is doing it?" And I said, "Well, it's Renaissance."
Wow.
So kudos to you guys. That was somebody in your industry
that is so cool
that saw it.
Damn.
And he noticed also the need for the construction industry and how most people aren't putting out content like that. So that was really cool for me to experience because it was affirming for us on what we're doing, but also for what you guys are doing. So
that's
kudos
really cool.
to you.
That's awesome.
Thank
so
you.
stoked to be working with you guys.
We're so
and
grateful.
Continuing our relationship. And like I said, watching you grow as we're growing too, it's really cool to see. So
I appreciate
we just
it. It's
love
awesome.
Eshelman Construction. I feel like we just have been kindred spirits this whole process. We're so grateful to be working with you. You're so full of integrity. You're so just an awesome guy. You're just so trustworthy. Like of course you're so successful, and we're just grateful to be on your journey because it is a journey.
It is.
And it takes good peeps, right? Like it takes a village to run a business.
It
and
really
it takes people, and we do pride ourselves, and we want to feel like we are your in-person marketing team. Like we want to, like we're your in-house team, like not just this faraway extension agency off to the side. Like we want to feel like we're on the Eshelman team. Like when we drive around town and we see your signs, we're like, yes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like we're
That's
proud.
right.
So, well, thank you for coming on the show.
thanks for having me.
Everyone
this was fun.
can follow Eshelman Construction at Eshelman Construction. Follow, I'm doing this for you. Normally we ask the guests to do this, but I'm being your spokesperson.
No, please do.
And then EshelmanConstruction.com. That's the URL.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a dash.
There is a dash.
Construction.
Damn it, I knew there was a dash.
Yeah.
Eshelman-construction.com. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you guys. This was fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. First podcast.
Yeah.
Checked.
Checked.
Let's do it.
More to come.